The video I am going to do today is definitely something I wish I had watched when I was in school. If I knew the things I'm going to talk today back then when I was in school, I would have saved definitely a lot of time and done so many things differently. If you need to jump into the specific sections without watching the entire video, I will put the time snaps here somewhere so you can jump and watch the specific sections you want. As a doctor, I have learned so many things about medicine in medical school for over 5 years, and after that I have worked in so many different specialities over many years. So it is definitely true that I have learned theoretical aspects and understood those theories very well, and also practically applied them on a day-to-day basis during my work. So ideally speaking, I should be able to recall at least 80 to 85% of these things and should be able to face any exam comes along the way effortlessly. I don't know about you, but definitely for me it's not true. After my final exam in the medical school, I have faced several different exams, but for all these exams I have studied almost the same thing over and over again. I have passed my exams each time, but it kind of makes me feel like stupid to study the same thing over and over again, but still not remember it forever. Because of this, several months ago I decided to learn how to study effectively. Today I am so glad that I took time to learn this. Today I am learning so many different things, not only medicine but also several other things. But I learn these things effortlessly and I enjoy my life at the same time. It is so unfortunate that our teachers didn't teach us how to study and how to learn effectively. And also they didn't teach us that there are theories behind these studying techniques and the evidence for these theories. I thought to do this video because I genuinely want you to know the things I know and things I find very effective in my life. If you have children, please teach these things to them as well, and they will be very thankful to you in future. Nowadays, I learn clinical medicine almost every day, not for an exam, but for future me. I learn French these days because I want to go to France and talk to natives in their language, and I always wanted to learn new languages. I also learn general knowledge facts like the capitals of the world and the different countries in the world. This is basically to prepare myself as a better teacher for my sons. Apart from this, I do some focused, spaced learning for a couple of diplomas I will be doing in future. So how do I same time look after 3 kids, work as a doctor and learn all these things as well? Let me share with you the system I have developed over time and which I find is very effective. But before that, let me tell you a couple of common mistakes I used to do when it comes to studying. I used to think that reading something over and over again will help me to stick the information in my brain. But this is proven to be wrong. It is not putting information into the brain, but taking information out of your brain that helps to, develop strong connections in the neurons and help to develop memory. The earlier you understand is better for you. This is definitely something you need to teach to your children, that we need to actively recall the information from our brain in order to develop a good memory. Next thing is highlighting. We all religiously highlight things that we think important and we think we should remember. But it is proven that highlighting information in a book or an article or something does not help to memorize it. This is because our brain is very good at recognizing things but not recalling things. I am pretty sure that almost every one of you must have had an experience where you remember something you have written in a particular page, and where exactly in that page and what color you have highlighted it, but you struggle to recall the exact fact what was there. It is so painful, isn't it, to recall everything around it but not the information bit. This is because our brain is very good at forming connections and recognizing things but not recalling things. So highlighting is not very effective, but if you're someone you think you really need to highlight, do it as less as you can, because the more we highlight, the lesser the importance of those highlights become. So my system of studying and memorizing things include 3 main components. So these 3 things are the things I have studied a lot about, and I have taken some classes in Skillshare, and I have also practically tried these things and found very effective. Okay, the 3 components are understanding, note-taking and active recalling. When it comes to effectively studying something, there can be 1,000 different ways. And I must tell you that these are not, this is not the ultimate system of learning or something, but these are the 3 main things I found that we should pay more attention and we should focus more on. So number 1, understanding. It is definitely the most important fact. I don't think I need to tell you more about understanding because the meaning of it is self-explanatory. But what really is understanding? If you really understand something, it is said that you should be able to explain it to a child, a 5-year-old child who do not know anything about what you are talking. So if you are able to put it in a way that a child can understand, that means you have a better understanding. But you will often find if you try to do this, you will get stuck in several different places. So that means you can recognize the places you lack understanding, and then you can try and understand these places better. It's something like you are able to see the entire picture without just focusing on tiny bits. Sometimes when we study, we often forget the bigger picture. For example, when it comes to medicine, different facts we study are like leaves, different fruits, or different branches of a tree. But we often fail to, see the entire tree all together. If you are a medical student, I think you should pay more attention to, find these connections and see the bigger picture or see the entire tree altogether. When they say you should be able to explain things to a child, it doesn't mean that you physically have to find someone and explain it, because it's not practical. But inside your head, you should try to explain it to someone who have no idea what you're talking about. Honestly, I think if you are an experienced doctor who is working on daily basis, you should have a better understanding of the things. So this first component is almost not applicable to you. But for me, if I learn something new, even today, I come back home and I try to, just casually talk about it to my husband or my son, because they don't know nothing about medicine and they are very good at asking me questions as well. So I often find it helpful to recognize the areas I lack understanding. So next component is note taking. I mean, we all know that note taking is important, but just summarizing a lecture note or summarizing a chapter in a book, is that helpful? It is true that if you actively recall something and write it down or type it down in your notes, it can help you to stick that information for some time, but it doesn't last longer. We all know that. Over time, I have tried so many different systems of note taking. Initially, I used to, write my notes in books, and then I thought, okay, I should write my notes in A4 sheets and, bind them together. I have used OneNote and found it very helpful. I almost used it for like 4 or 5 years. But now I have found something that is very useful for me, and I think that is the best available system for note taking so far. So before I talk about what I use to make notes, let's talk about how to effectively make notes. So if you are, say, read a chapter in a book or an article, you should, ideally take some time to formulate a few questions for yourself that will help you to understand the things better. Say, for example, if I read something about vitamin B12 deficiency, I usually formulate questions for future self, like, what are the symptoms of B12 deficiency? How do you diagnose vitamin B12 deficiency? So what are the cutoff limits? And what are the available treatment options? So on and so forth. So when I take notes, my headline of the note will be this question, and I will show you how I use an app called Notion to hide the information underneath these headlines, so that when I am reading my notes, I only see the questions. Before I look at my actual notes, I try to answer the questions inside my head, and then I open up and read basically the content or the answer to my questions. So your notes should compose of a set of questions for yourself.
This is the Notion app I have opened in the desktop. My entire life operating system is inside Notion. However, today we are looking at the My Notes section only. As you can see here, I have all my notes in one platform. These notes are tagged according to the relevance, and also I have scanned and attached all the physical notes or paper notes into these. I can also have some web links inside the relevant sections for reference. So if I open OneNote here, you can see all the tags, attachments and web links are on the top of the page, and the below are my notes hidden inside this toggle feature. So the main purpose here is that for me to try and recall the notes before I open the relevant sections. It is very difficult to consolidate all the features in Notion inside this one particular video, but as you can already see, there is a myriad of things I can do inside this platform.
As you can see, I don't have lots of notes in my Notion, but it really depends on individual person how much notes you need. If you are a student, you definitely should have more notes than me. The things I note down are basically the things I find interesting on day-to-day basis when I work or when I study, and also we doctors, when we work, sometimes we find a patient that we have no clue about, so we might decide to go back and read on the presentation of that patient or the management of that patient. So these kind of things only I make notes of. So Notion is a really good platform, and I am a big fan of Notion. If you are a medical student, law student, or any kind of student, this is something you should try if you don't have a system for note taking. But if you are already happy with your system of note taking, I don't think everyone should change into Notion. But Notion is definitely something to look for if you are looking for an upgrade. It is totally free. I was a student in a third world country. I often feel for those children in third world countries because they do not get exposed to amazing stuff like this. And these things are totally free in the internet. One of my main regrets in life is that spending my childhood, my college life without knowing these kind of life-changing stuff. Almost all the students in the UK, USA use Notion religiously, not only to keep their notes, but to manage and organize their entire life. When I see these students giving interviews about how they use Notion or how they use Anki flashcards, which I'm going to talk to you about in a little bit, I feel very sad about how I spend my college and my student life. So that is why genuinely I do this video. I strongly believe that every student in the world should have equal opportunities like a student in the UK or USA, because internet is everywhere, and nowadays things are not you don't even have to pay for these amazing things. These are freely available in the internet. Okay, the third component is active recall. This is so far the best thing I have come across in so many years. If I were to give an advice to my 13-year self, I would definitely be lecturing myself about the importance of active recall, spaced repetition, and Anki flashcards. So what is active recall? Active recall is trying to actively retrieve information out of our brain. When we learn something indefinitely over time, our memory decay, and with time this memory fade and we lose our memory completely unless we recall it. So each time we recall some information out of our brain, our neurons form stronger connections, and the more we recall, the more stronger these connections gets, and more stronger our memory gets. So if we keep actively recalling some information with a gap in between these recalls, which is called spaced repetition, we should eventually the information going to be stick with us forever. The theory behind active recall and spaced repetition is best explained using the forgetting curve. In 1885, a German psychologist called Hermann Ebbinghaus decided to memorize thousands of nonsense words and recorded how many words he forgot over time. So doing this experiment, he discovered something called forgetting curve. So according to the experiment, he found that you forget most of the things you study in 24 hours. And if you don't practically recall this information, your memory decay almost exponentially. It is very individual thing. However, the time starting to decay the memory can be different from person to person, and the time you should take to actively recall the information can be different as well. But the experiment found that if you increase the gap between each recalls over time, the flatter the curve become and the longer the memory retain. If you need to read and know more about this experiment and the theory behind spaced repetition, I will put down an article called How to Remember Anything Forever, written by Nikki Case. So it sounds like a lot of things, isn't it? Like we learn a lot of things, and actually recalling everything with a space in between it sounds like a lot to do. So how do we do this practically? So the best way to do this is using a flashcard. Flashcard is something like a card you have written, maybe a question in the front side and the answer in the back side. So you look at the question and you try to remember the answer, and then you look at the back side. So to actually recall things with spaced repetition, some people use a set of boxes. They keep 4 or 5 boxes. Like the box 1 has a set of cards, new cards, and the box 2 are for the cards that you easily be able to recall, and the box 3 will be for the cards that you find it hard to recall, and the box 4 will be for the cards that you don't remember. So when you take a card and you try to answer the question. If you find it easy, you put it in the box 1. If you find it very hard, you put it in the box 4. So the box 1, you easy cards, you go through these cards like say every week or something. The box 2, you go through these cards every day, and the hard cards, you go through these cards like every half a day or something like that. So these time gaps can vary from person to person. So this is the basic idea. So people use different sorts of things to do this spaced repetition. I am going to tell you a system that is very effective, and this is being used by students across the world and found very effective way of doing this active recall. There is an app, or there is a website called Anki flashcards. So this website used the theory behind the experiment I've explained above, and the theory behind the forgetting curve, and they use spaced repetition. So they have an inbuilt algorithm to make our lives easier. It is totally free for use in the website, and you can download the Android app for free, but for the iOS app you have to pay some amount. If you don't have money, you can still use the Anki web feature for free. So let's see how my Anki looks like.
This is how the interface looked like when you basically have decks of cards, and you can group these decks the way you want. So if I open one section here, I will open my medicine decks, and inside that there are a group of several different sections. If I open one, you can see the front of the card. When I open one card, it's either a question or a paragraph with some blanks in it. So I try to answer the question inside my mind or fill in the blanks. In the bottom of the page, you can see 4 sections mentioned as again, hard, good and easy. And there is a time shown just above each of these sections. Basically, when you find an answer is easy, you just click the easy tab, and then the card will automatically reappear in 2 months' time. Similarly, if you mark a card as hard, it will reappear in 12 hours. The times shown here are not the default times comes in the app, but I have customized the time according to my personal needs. So the algorithm is in such a way that I have to trust the system and just keep doing my cards. So automatically I will be recalling the cards I find I have very poor memory more often, and the areas I have a good memory, I will recall them with a large gap in between. This basically means if I continue this practice over time, I will be able to recall things better. Let me show you some of the cards I have prepared for my son. These are basically general knowledge facts and also the times table. This system is very effective as well as very efficient, because I will be doing the cards I need to be doing more often, and the cards I don't need to be doing with a very big gap in between. I mainly use the basic card type and the close feature. There are so many advanced features which I honestly do not think necessary for me.
So how do I use Anki and how often I use it? I actually use it every day. I practice Anki flashcards like 30 to 45 minutes almost every day. I use this to study medicine, to learn French, to learn general knowledge facts. My son is 7 years old and he's not a big fan of Anki yet, but I have made a condition for him that whenever he is going to use his tab, he must finish one deck of cards before he uses his tab. Whenever I make notes in my Notion, I copy and paste these notes into Anki. Whenever I make a deck of cards in Anki, I am almost sure that if I do this daily basis, I am going to memorize this information. Because of this, almost always I don't need to go back and look at my notes in Notion. That is there for me to use in future if needs be. So let's recap what we have talked so far. I have talked about how to effortlessly learn something, and I have talked about 3 main components in my system of learning and memorizing. These are making sure that you understand things, an effective way of note taking, and I went through my Notion, which is the system I use to take notes, And also we went through the importance of active recall and spaced repetition, and I've introduced you to the Anki flashcard, which is the best way to do this effortlessly. But there is something you should understand as well. I started using these things several months ago, and I have done so many experiments. I have failed, and then I have incorporated different strategies. Now I use these things comfortably, but there is definitely a learning curve. If you try to use Notion, for example, it can be so intimidating because like there are basically infinity things you can do inside Notion, and easily you can get overwhelmed. So understand that there is a learning curve for these things. You can actually watch some good YouTube videos about how to use Anki, how to use Notion, and the benefits of these. I promise you will not regret exploring these ideas. If you have children, please teach these things to them. They should be at an age where they should understand the effectiveness of it, and they should be able to use it as well. It's definitely something for children at GCSE level, if they're doing their advanced levels, or if they're in college. Introducing these things to your children can be life-changing for them. So let me quickly tell you, as a very busy person, as a working mom, and as a doctor, how I use Anki, flashcards, and Notion. Because as I told before, the first component, understanding, is almost not applicable to us. So I have installed Anki and Notion in my laptop and my mobile phone. So whenever I need these, they are in my fingertips. So while working in the hospital, if I come across something I think important for me, or if I come across a new information, or if I have to read about a patient, while I am reading it, I just make notes in my Notion, and at the same time I copy and paste and make a deck of flashcards in my Anki for that particular thing. So this happens almost everyday basis. And whenever I go to work and whenever I come back from work, this is like 15 times back and forth, I listen to a podcast. Often I don't finish the podcast in one day. I listen I take few days to finish a podcast. But whenever I finish a podcast, I sit down and make notes out of that. I listen to a lot of educational podcasts, and also a lot of general podcasts as well. So whenever I find an information is important, I make notes for this. But if I think there is something I need to memorize, this is basically the stuff related to medicine, I make a flashcard for that. Honestly speaking, if you get used to this system, it honestly takes like extra 5 or 10 minutes from your time, because anyway you spend time to read something, but it takes extra 5 or 10 minutes to convert this into a note and a flashcard. But just making a note or a flashcard and keeping it there is not helpful. So you have to make the habit of using these flashcards almost daily basis. Honestly, I think if you take the bits about taking effective notes using whatever the platform you prefer, and the importance of spaced repetition, and also the importance of Anki flashcards, it is enough for me for this video. As I told before, if you have children, if you know a student, please tell this to them, and I will be grateful if you share this video with anyone you think this will be helpful. If you are interested, I will go through my Notion page, which I call is my life operating system, in a future video in detail. I have taken some Skillshare classes on how to use Notion and how to use Anki, and I've learned so many features over time. So I can try and do a video teaching you how to use Anki and all the advanced features in that as well. But for now, this is all for this video, and I hope you have learned something new out of this video, and thank you so much for watching.